I remember the first time I set foot in that old country house, the kind of place that seemed alive even before you noticed it. Fog clung to the twisted branches of the surrounding forest, curling in pale fingers around the windows. Every step on the gravel path felt amplified, the crunch echoing like a warning in the silent air. Inside, the walls whispered with the weight of years, the faint hum of the heating system mixing with distant, unplaceable creaks. A flickering light in the corner cast shadows that moved just slightly off rhythm, almost as if they were trying to reach me. I told myself it was just an old house settling, just imagination. But then came the small things. A door closing on its own, a chair scraping softly across the wooden floor, footsteps that weren't mine. And in that calm, suffocating quiet, I began to notice the subtle chill that wasn't from the draft, the brush of a cold breath where no one was standing. Every evening I returned, the feeling grew, threading itself around my thoughts, tightening like fog settling low on the ground. I wanted to leave, but something kept me there, as if the house itself had learned my name. That night, when the lamp flickered one last time and a soft knocking came from the basement, I froze. That's when I saw it. It was late. The hallway stretched before me, longer than memory should allow. Pale light flickered from the ceiling, soft, unsteady, casting shadows that seemed to lean closer with each step. The air smelled faintly of dust and something sharper, like iron. I could feel it pressing against my skin. Every footstep echoed. Or maybe it didn't. I noticed the walls first. They breathed, subtle, slow, rising and falling as if the hallway itself inhaled. I reached out, fingertips brushing cold paint. It shifted. Or maybe my hand had. A low hum began, far off at first, like a memory vibrating through my chest. Then it grew, faint but insistent. I stopped. It disappeared, nothing. The silence settled, thick and wet. I could almost hear it pooling around my ankles, soft rustling against the floor, shadows crawling over my shoes. I turned slowly, eyes sweeping the corridor. Empty, but I knew. Someone, something had been there. Or maybe I had imagined it. The pause between my breaths felt too long, too loud. The light overhead pulsed. One flicker, two. A gray smear stretched across the far wall, moving with a mind of its own. I blinked. It stayed. Shadows lengthened, reaching but retreating the moment I focused. My skin prickled, hairs standing at attention. The hum returned, softer now underneath my ribs. I could feel it vibrating through the soles of my feet, and then it was gone again. The floorboards groaned beneath me, though they were smooth. Or maybe I imagined the creak. I tried to step lightly. Each motion made the walls tighten, pressing in like invisible hands. A draft, cold and thin, whispered along my neck. I shivered. It carried a faint smell of mildew, of something long decayed. I paused, listening. Nothing answered. The hallway seemed endless now. Every flicker of light created new corners, new shadows. I knew the end should be there, somewhere ahead. But it remained out of reach, blurred by pale glow. My breath left slow, uneven clouds. I felt watched. The eyes weren't human. Not present. Not absent. Just there, hovering. I tried to move faster. The floor resisted. Every step felt like wading through air thick with silence. I wanted to run, but my legs didn't obey. The hum returned briefly, low and teasing. Then, nothing. A soft scrape grazed my shoulder. I spun. Empty hallway. My pulse shouted in my ears. The walls. They leaned closer. I could see faint textures, ripples beneath the paint, like skin beneath fabric. Breathing, always breathing. Light flickered again, slower now, more deliberate. Shadows pooled along the corners. The air smelled metallic, acrid, pulling at my throat. I swallowed. The hallway was quiet, almost. Expectant, I stopped. The silence was so dense it pressed against my chest. I couldn't tell if the hum had vanished, or if it had always been inside me. A soft footstep behind me. Slow. Tentative. I froze. It didn't repeat. I turned. Empty. I moved forward, each step measured, careful. The walls seemed to sigh as I passed, a subtle exhale that grazed my skin. The light flickered one last time. Shadows pooled at my feet. I reached the end of the corridor. Nothing waited. Only emptiness. The hum had vanished. Even the air felt lighter. I stood there, listening to my own heartbeat, to the quiet that was almost louder than the hum. The hallway remained still, but I knew. Somewhere it still breathed. The kitchen smelled of cold steel and old wood. The fridge hummed softly, a low static that pressed against my ears. I moved quietly, bare feet brushing the tiles, searching for something to eat. The pantry door stood slightly ajar. Pale light from the hallway stretched across its edges, flickering. A faint rustling drifted from within. I froze. The sound was soft, deliberate, like a whisper brushing against the walls. I leaned closer. The air smelled faintly of flour and something damp, something that shouldn't be there. A pulse of unease crawled along my spine. The whispers paused when I touched the door. The faint rustling faded, leaving only silence. I exhaled, slow, shallow, the breath fogging my eyelashes. The door creaked open. Inside, shelves lined with jars and cans, neat and ordinary. Flour sat in a bag, plain, soft, waiting. And yet, there was a mark, a handprint pressed into the white powder. Delicate, too precise to be accidental. I ran a fingertip over it. Cold, moist. I swallowed. The whisper returned. Or maybe it had never stopped. I couldn't tell if it came from behind the door or from inside my own head. I turned to leave. A sudden brush against my shoulder made me flinch. Cold, firm, like a finger of ice sliding along my skin. Goosebumps rose in slow waves crawling over my arms. I held my breath. The pantry was still. The jars did not shake. The floorboards did not creak, but the feeling lingered. Someone or something had been there. Close enough to touch. Close enough to breathe. I reached for a can of beans, trembling slightly. The whisper rose again, faint, teasing. I felt it in my chest, as if it were drifting through the air into me. The light overhead flickered. Shadows pooled along the edges of the room. The pantry seemed larger than it should be, corners stretching into darkness. I could hear my own heartbeat in the hush, a slow, steady echo. I tried to focus on the shelves. Rows of jars, each one ordinary. But my hands kept brushing phantom edges, as if reaching for what wasn't there. The flour bag stared back at me, white and empty feeling, yet heavy with presence. I stepped back. The pantry door swayed. A faint chill followed, settling on my neck. A whisper, closer this time, soft enough to make my ears ache. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I could smell the faint metallic tang in the air, like wet iron, like something small and forgotten. The mark in the flour seemed to shift. Not moving exactly, but alive in some way, like it was breathing beneath the surface. I wanted to close the door. I wanted to leave the room. But the pantry had my attention. Held it tight. I touched the mark again. It was colder than anything I'd felt before. The whisper curled around me, a coil of air brushing my cheeks. I shivered. I stepped back. The cold hand pressed against my shoulder again, gentler this time, almost hesitant. I turned fast. Nothing. Only pale light, jars, and shadows. I could feel the emptiness pressing in. The kitchen seemed smaller. The walls closed. The floor tilted slightly, as if the room itself had shifted while I wasn't looking. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the pulse in my ears. The whisper stopped. Or maybe I stopped hearing it. The flour bag sat silently, handprint etched in frozen powder. No rustling. No presence, only the faint hum from the fridge, a quiet reminder that I was alone. I left the pantry open, stepped back toward the hallway, my fingers still tingling from the cold. The whispers had not returned, yet I could feel them, like a shadow pressed against my shoulder. Watching, waiting. The kitchen was still, but I could not shake the sense that it had changed while I wasn't looking, and that something, had followed me, if only in silence. I closed the door gently. The handprint in the flour remained. The air smelled faintly of cold metal and dust. I could still feel the brush against my skin, soft and lingering. I stepped away. Every footstep echoed faintly, swallowed by the hush. The pantry waited, and I knew it would whisper again. The attic stairs smelled of dust and wood polish, old and sharp. The air was still, thick with heat from the day and cold shadows pooling in corners. I climbed slowly, each step creaking beneath my weight, echoing softly against the rafters. A single bulb hung from the ceiling. It swayed gently, swinging as if caught in a rhythm only it could hear. The pale light stretched across the attic floor, bending shadows into strange, fluid shapes. I paused. Each swing revealed something new. A smear on the floor, a handprint pressed into dust. I blinked. Gone. The hum of the house was low, almost imperceptible. But it pressed into my chest, a vibration that made the floorboards seem alive. A face appeared, brief and fleeting, eyes wide, staring. And just as quickly gone. I turned slowly, scanning the corners. Empty. But the feeling lingered, curling around my spine. The light swung again. Shadows stretched across the rafters like fingers. I felt the attic breathe with me. Or maybe it breathed on its own. I tried to step back, to leave. The stairs. They had shifted. Longer now. Deeper. As if the house itself had stretched while I wasn't looking. I hesitated at the first step. The wood was slick with cold dust. Each tread echoed my hesitation. The attic seemed larger now, walls expanding, ceiling higher. The bulb swayed again. I caught movement at the edge of my vision. A shadow flickered across the floor, then vanished. I took a breath. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and something metallic, damp. I turned, half expecting to see the face again. Nothing, just shadows, breathing in silence. The hum deepened, vibrating through my teeth, making my jaw ache slightly. I stepped forward. The floorboards groaned beneath me. The light swung, revealing a handprint on the far wall. I leaned closer, cold, smudged, not mine. I tried to leave. The stairs stretched farther still. The landing felt distant, unreachable. Each step forward was slow, weighted with the air around me. The bulb swung faster now. Shadows collided, overlapping, folding into corners that should not exist. I could feel them in the back of my neck. A presence patient, watching. I stopped. Every breath left in soft clouds that hovered in the pale light. I could feel the attic pulse, faint and rhythmic. It had a heartbeat. Or borrowed mine? The face returned. Just for a moment. Eyes wide, lips still. I blinked. Gone. I ran my hand along the railing, splinters biting lightly. The stairs creaked beneath my fingers. The hum was quieter now, distant. Yet the shadows lingered, stretching, reaching, folded into angles that should not exist. I could smell old dust and faint iron, a cold tang in the air. The attic waited. The light swung. The shadows moved. I took a step back, another. The staircase seemed endless, but my feet kept moving, slow, careful, almost hypnotized by the swaying bulb. The attic had not changed. I had. Or perhaps it had shifted silently while I watched. The last swing of the light stretched a shadow across the floor. I recognized it. Not a handprint this time. Not a face. Something older, wider, waiting. I breathed. The stairs before me still seemed far, yet I moved forward. One step, another. The light swung. The attic stayed silent. The shadows lingered. And I realized I would carry the sway, the hum, the weight of that space with me long after I left. Night had fallen. The room smelled faintly of cold linen and dust settling on old wood. The moonlight stretched thin through the curtains, pale and trembling. I lay still. Soft footsteps echoed above me. Slow, deliberate. The roof, empty, yet the tapping continued. A rhythm that made the floor vibrate subtly beneath my bed. I held my breath. The air felt thick, heavy, pressing against my chest. The sound shifted, moving in impossible patterns, right to left, then far back, closer again. I sat up slowly. The sheets clung to my skin, cold and damp. Each step above seemed aware of me, tracing over beams that should not carry weight. I strained my eyes. Shadows played along the walls, distorted by the faint moonlight. I could see them stretch, fold, almost reach toward me. A tap on the roof, then a pause. Then two more taps, slow, almost gentle. It was deliberate, purposeful, yet not human. I pressed my hands to the mattress. The air smelled faintly metallic, like iron or wet clay. Each sound vibrated through the walls, the ceiling, the air itself. I rose to the window. The glass was cool under my palms. The night stretched beyond, still, quiet, vast. Then a shadow flickered across the pane, a figure just for a moment, thin, shaped vaguely like a person, eyes or maybe hollows staring, and then gone. The footsteps continued, tapping now in spirals, impossible turns. Across the roof, down the slope, around the chimneys, my chest tightened with each step. I wanted to run, but my legs felt anchored. I pressed my ear to the ceiling. The vibrations moved under my fingers, up my arms, into my chest. I could feel them in my teeth, a subtle shiver crawling along nerves I hadn't realized existed. The shadow appeared again at the window, this time closer, distorted, leaning forward. Then nothing. I breathed slowly, trying to calm the pulse in my ears, but the roof kept moving, tapping, scraping, circling in patterns that defied logic. I reached for the nightstand. The wood felt rough beneath my fingers, grounding me. Yet the air around me quivered with presence. I realized I was completely alone. The room, the house, the street outside. Yet the footsteps, the shadow, the tapping, they weren't bound by walls. I sat on the edge of the bed. Each pause in the footsteps stretched, almost unbearable. Silence, thick and heavy, pressing against my temples. Then a single step, right above me. Then a long pause. It felt like waiting. I could smell something faintly acrid now, like burning wood, mixed with the cold linen of my sheets. I could feel a slight draft brushing against my neck. The shadow had vanished, yet the presence remained, patient, lingering. I pressed my palms together. The floorboards hummed faintly beneath my feet. The roof moved, tapping in patterns that made no sense, yet were precise, intentional. I leaned back. The moonlight stretched across the walls, pale and trembling, casting long, uneven shadows. I could see the outlines of trees beyond, shifting in the night wind. But the footsteps were only above me. I exhaled slowly, letting the breath rise in foggy clouds in the cool night air. The tapping tapered off, retreating across the roof, moving farther and farther away. The shadow did not return. The air smelled faintly of cold metal and distant rain. I was alone. The moonlight shifted, stretching shadows across the floor. I lay back down, feeling the mattress press into my skin, the sheets cold and damp. The tapping had stopped, but I could still feel it. The presence, waiting somewhere above, somewhere unseen, and I knew it would return. It was late. The house was quiet, still heavy with night air. The kitchen light flickered softly above the counter, casting long shadows on the tiled floor. I stood alone, stirring something on the stove. The smell of simmering broth mingled with dust and faint traces of metal. Outside, the world was silent. Then the cold came. A thin breath brushed the back of my neck. Slow, deliberate, not from a draft, not from the open window. I froze. My hands hovered above the pot. Steam rose and drifted toward the ceiling, but the air around me was colder than it should have been. Another breath. This one closer. It grazed my skin like frost, sharp enough to sting. My breath hitched. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only the pale hum of the refrigerator pulsing in and out like a heartbeat. Its rhythm was wrong. Too slow. Too aware. The cabinets creaked. One opened slightly, a hinge sighing in the still air. Then another. And another. The doors moved gently, as if stirred by invisible hands. I stepped back. The floor beneath me groaned, echoing up through my legs. The air smelled faintly of something sour, like wet wood left too long in the dark. The hum of the fridge deepened, low, uneven. It vibrated through the floor, through my ribs, into the spaces between my teeth. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My body stayed still, locked in place, breath shallow. The cold pressed closer, sliding over my shoulders, curling around my throat like fog. A whisper drifted through the room, soft, fragile, almost kind. Leave. It brushed against my ear, barely audible, almost gentle. I wanted to obey, but I couldn't. The spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering against the counter. The sound felt too loud, breaking the stillness like glass. The whisper grew fainter, retreating into corners I couldn't see. The cabinets began to sway. Not violently, just enough to make the hinges sigh and the air move. Each creak felt timed with the hum of the fridge, a rhythm that didn't belong to the house. I backed against the wall, feeling the tile cold against my palms. The light flickered once, twice. Shadows danced across the ceiling, warping, bending. Something moved among them, a shape. Or maybe the suggestion of one. Tall, bent, flickering in and out with the rhythm of the light. I blinked. Gone. But the air hadn't softened. It stayed heavy, cold, breathing against my skin in slow intervals. The whisper returned. Closer now. Right beside me. Leave, before it remembers you. My throat tightened. The words sank beneath my skin like ice. I tried to take a step forward. My knees trembled, but my body refused to move. The hum rose again, louder this time, until it filled my head. The refrigerator door trembled slightly, as if something inside pressed against it from within. Then silence. The cold breath withdrew. The cabinets hung open. The spoon lay motionless on the counter. For a moment, I thought it was over. I reached for the light switch. My hand shook. A single puff of air kissed the back of my neck again, fainter, colder, and in that stillness, I knew it wasn't gone. I turned the light off. The darkness felt safer somehow, quieter, less awake. The hum returned to normal, soft and steady, but I could still feel it. The breath that didn't belong to me. The whisper lingered behind my thoughts, soft and patient. Leave. I left the kitchen light off that night, and when I closed the door, the air felt warmer again. But I didn't look back. Not even once. The hallway smelled of old paint and varnish. The kind of scent that clings to the air long after the wood has stopped breathing. It was late. Too late for the lights to still be on. I walked slowly, the floor creaking beneath my feet, each step swallowed by the stillness. Along the walls hung portraits. Dozens of them. Faces frozen in time, all watching. The pale light overhead flickered. Each flicker caught a different pair of eyes, glazed, empty, but aware. I paused in front of one. A man in an old coat, collar stiff, expression calm. His gaze met mine, unmoving, yet it didn't feel still. I took a step back. The air tightened, growing heavier, thicker. It pressed against my skin, against my throat, like the house itself was holding its breath. Another flicker. The face seemed closer, the eyes sharper now. I blinked, and it returned to normal. I turned slightly, letting my gaze move down the corridor. The portraits lined both sides, men, women, children. Each brushstroke too precise, too alive, each one following. The murmuring began softly. A faint rustle, almost like words caught behind the walls. I couldn't understand them, but I felt them. They filled the space between breaths. I looked back at the first portrait. The man's mouth, it had changed. Just slightly. A curve at the corner of his lips that hadn't been there before. My chest tightened. The smile was faint, barely real, but it was there. I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. The expression stayed. I turned away quickly, pretending not to notice. My footsteps echoed down the hall, uneven and nervous. The air carried the faint scent of oil and canvas, mixed with something sour, like old skin beneath dust. I passed another painting. A woman with dark eyes and a lace collar. Her gaze followed, slow and deliberate. The longer I looked, the more her pupils seemed to narrow. The murmuring grew louder. Still soft, but closer now, like whispers pressed against my ears. My heartbeat matched the flicker of the lights, unsteady, skipping. I turned back to the man's portrait. He was smiling, fully now, teeth faintly visible, painted with care that no artist should possess. The air grew colder. It touched the back of my neck like a warning. The murmuring stopped. Everything waited. I couldn't look away. His painted eyes seemed alive, glistening faintly as if wet. I could almost see my reflection within them, small, distorted. The canvas pulsed. Or maybe I imagined it, but the face was closer again, sharper, more defined, the smile wider. Too wide. I stepped back until my shoulder brushed another frame. It rocked gently against the wall, a low creak breaking the silence. Then another portrait shifted, and another. The sound rippled through the hall like a breath. The man's smile faded, but his eyes didn't leave mine. They followed as I moved backward one step at a time. The murmuring returned, softer now. Almost comforting. I could feel it beneath my skin, humming against my pulse. It said nothing I could understand. Yet I knew what it wanted. The air was tight again. My chest barely moved. Every portrait seemed closer than before, their gazes aligned, their faces tilted just slightly toward me. I reached the end of the hallway. The final portrait waited there, a blank canvas, framed and untouched. No face, just white. The murmuring stopped. The air grew still. I turned back toward the others. All of them were smiling now. I stood frozen, heart heavy, breath shallow. The white canvas behind me was no longer blank. I didn't need to look to know. I could feel the wet paint drying, and the weight of new eyes watching me from behind. The hallway fell silent again. Only the faint hum of the light remained. Steady, endless. And somewhere between the walls, a quiet, unseen smile lingered. The night was quiet enough to hear the wires hum. A low, steady vibration in the walls. The kind that never stops once you notice it. The phone sat on the counter. Old, heavy. A faded cord curled like something asleep. It rang once. Then again, each tone stretched too long, like it didn't want to end. I lifted the receiver slowly. The air on the other end was thick, filled with static. Not noise, something closer to breathing through dust. Hello? My voice sounded smaller than I expected. The static deepened, layered with faint movement. Soft rustling like fingers brushing the line. Then a whisper. Not words at first, just breath trying to shape one. I held the phone closer. My skin prickled against the plastic. It whispered again, a name I couldn't make out. I hung up. The air felt heavier now, as if the call had left something behind. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. Same tone, same length, same pull. This time I didn't answer. I stared at it instead. The red light blinked faintly, flashing in uneven rhythm. When it stopped, I exhaled. But the silence wasn't empty. I could still hear the static, not from the phone, but from somewhere behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing moved. Only the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock. Still, I felt the air shift, thicker, charged. I picked up the receiver again. No dial tone, just static, breathing slow and shallow. Then, my own voice. It was faint, distant, like a recording played underwater. I was saying something, a message I didn't remember leaving. I'm still here. The words looped, crackling through the interference. I pressed the receiver to my ear, heart crawling up my throat. The loop broke suddenly. A new voice took over, deeper, slower. It said a name, Maris. I froze. The name meant nothing, but it carried weight, like it remembered me before I could remember it. I whispered back, barely audible. Who are you? Static. Then laughter. Soft, strained, almost like air leaking through teeth. I dropped the phone. It swung on its cord, tapping gently against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. The sound filled the room, syncing with the pulse in my wrist. I took a step back, then another. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew rhythmic, measured, deliberate. I reached out and steadied it, hand trembling against the cool plastic. The line was still open. I heard the whisper again. Closer, right behind the static. Maris. The name slid through the receiver and into the air beside me. I turned. The hallway behind me was empty, but something in it felt aware. Waiting. The phone crackled again. This time the whisper wasn't alone. I could hear more. A faint chorus, each voice murmuring in different directions, their rhythm tangled with my breath. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Then faintly, another sound. A soft click, like a number being dialed. The static faded for a second. A new message played. It was me again, but older. Tired, whispering through a shaking breath. I told you not to answer. My throat tightened. The air in the room felt wrong. Too still, too stretched. The static began to climb, a hiss that swallowed every other sound. Through it, one final whisper emerged. Low, broken, behind me. Maris. The receiver slipped from my hand. It hit the floor softly, the voice still humming through the static. I stood there for a long time, listening to it fade. When it stopped, the hum in the walls went quiet too. The silence was total. But the name, it stayed. Pressed behind my teeth, waiting to be said again, and I knew the next time the phone rang, I would answer. It was evening when the lock gave way. A slow metallic sigh, after decades of silence. The door to the study had always been closed. Its key gone long before I was born. But tonight, it stood open just slightly, like it had been waiting. Dust floated in the thin strip of light spilling from the hall. Each particle moved as if pulled by something unseen, a quiet rhythm between air and memory. I pushed the door wider. The hinges trembled, their cry soft and hollow. The air inside was colder, heavy, still breathing somehow. Books lined the walls, their covers bent, their spines warped by time. Everything smelled of paper and iron. The curtains hung like skin, thin, brittle, untouched. The window behind them glowed faintly, washed in the last light of dusk, and in the center of it all, a desk. Its surface was scattered with dust except for one clear space. A single open diary sat there. The page was blank, almost glowing in the dimness. I stepped closer. Each board beneath my feet gave a quiet groan as if warning me back. The ink bottle beside the diary was dry, its glass cracked, its rim stained with something dark. Then, a sound, a faint scratch. Slow, deliberate, like a quill dragged gently across paper. I stopped breathing. The ink bottle hadn't moved. But the page wasn't blank anymore. A line appeared across it, thin, trembling, wet. Forming letters one at a time, I leaned closer. The air around the desk was colder now. A faint hum pressed against my ears, almost like someone whispering too softly to understand. More letters formed. A word, then a sentence. Each stroke seemed to pulse as it dried. I could smell the ink, sharp, metallic, like rust under rain. My name appeared in the middle of a sentence. Not written, etched. It stood out darker than the rest. I swallowed hard. The floor behind me creaked. Too close. Too steady to be the wind. I turned. Nothing. Only shelves and the quiet rhythm of my heartbeat. When I faced the diary again, there were more words. Different handwriting this time. Uneven. Frantic. Do not read further. The ink shimmered faintly as if still alive. I reached for the page, but my fingers froze just above it. The air was thick, pressing down. The diary turned on its own. Another page. Fresh ink. A new line forming slowly. I watched, unable to move. Each letter took its time, dragging across the paper like breath. The words came together and my stomach twisted when I read them. You opened the wrong door. The curtains shuddered. A pale ripple passed through the air, dust scattering toward the ceiling. I backed away, hand trembling near the doorknob. The diary flipped again. Another line. The strokes were slower this time. Heavier. Stay. My pulse rang in my ears. I turned the knob. It didn't move. Locked from the inside. I pressed my forehead to the wood. It was cold. The hum behind me grew louder, more human. I turned slowly, half expecting to see someone standing there. No one was, but the ink bottle was full again. The pen stood upright, resting on the page. The diary was writing. Not in words now, but in lines, curves, a shape I didn't recognize. Each stroke pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Then, without warning, it stopped. The ink spread outward, bleeding through the fibers, forming one final word beneath the symbol. My name. Written again, but this time the ink didn't dry. It shimmered softly in the pale light, like something breathing beneath the surface. I reached for it once more, and felt warmth rising from the page. The kind that comes from skin. The room fell silent. Even the dust had stopped moving. I stepped back. The diary closed itself with a slow, quiet thud. The air shifted. Then, the lock clicked shut. The study returned to stillness, as if nothing had ever opened. Only the faint hum remained, slipping through the cracks in the door, carrying my name back into the dark. It was late, the kind of late that folds time into quiet shapes. Rain tapped gently against the window upstairs. The air smelled faintly of rust and damp wood. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, bare feet pressing into the cold floorboards. The light above flickered once, and in that brief pulse I thought I heard something. A low, steady hum, not music, not a machine. Something slower, alive. It came from below. The door to the basement was half open, breathing softly each time the wind moved through the cracks. I shouldn't have gone down, but the hum, it felt like it was waiting. I reached for the rail. It was colder than I expected. The metal clung to my skin like it didn't want to let go. Step by step, I went down. The air thickened halfway, pressing against my chest. Each breath felt heavier, and the hum, it grew clearer. It pulsed between the walls, slow, measured, like something breathing beneath the floor. The bulb at the bottom flickered weakly. Its pale light swung, casting the stairs into fragments of gold and shadow. The smell hit next. Wet stone, old paint, something faintly metallic. I reached the last step. The hum stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Even the air forgot to move. Then, a soft creak. Across the room, in the far corner, a rocking chair swayed gently. Back and forth, back and forth. It shouldn't have moved. There was no draft, no breeze. But the chair moved like someone had just stood up. I froze. My hand brushed the wall behind me. The concrete was damp, grainy against my fingertips. The hum returned, quieter now, but closer. It crawled up my spine, vibrating through my teeth. Something flickered across the wall, a shadow, long and thin, stretching out as the bulb swayed. The rocking chair creaked again. Slow, measured, I whispered into the dark. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the hum curling around my name. Or maybe that's what it wanted me to think. The shadows moved differently now, not following the light. Following me, I stepped closer to the chair. Each movement felt wrong, like walking underwater, like time itself had thickened around me. The closer I got, the colder it became. I could see my breath drift in front of me, a pale cloud dissolving into the dark. The hum pulsed once, low and deep, and with it, the rocking stopped. The silence afterward felt heavier than the sound. The bulb flickered again, 1, 2, 3 times, and then steadied. Something had changed. The chair was still, but the shadow beneath it wasn't. It quivered softly, like fabric under wind. Then, slowly, it stretched, unfolding up the wall behind it. I stepped back, bare heel touching the edge of the bottom stair. The hum swelled again, vibrating the air. The walls seemed to breathe with it, a rhythm that wasn't mine. And then, a whisper, so faint, it might have been imagined, closer. The bulb above swung harder now, its light spinning wildly across the concrete. For a split second, I saw something in the reflection of a metal pipe, a figure standing just behind the chair. I blinked. Gone. Only the empty chair remained. The hum faded. A breathless quiet filled the room. My heartbeat felt too loud. I turned to climb back up, but the stairs, they seemed longer. Each step stretched into shadow, receding no matter how far I leaned forward. The hum rose again, this time behind me. Close enough that the air stirred against my hair. I didn't turn. Couldn't. My hand tightened around the rail. It was trembling beneath my grip. And then, the voice. Low. Soft. It didn't come from the room. It came from inside the hum itself. You heard me. The bulb snapped once, a single flash. Then darkness. The hum stopped. The air eased. And in that silence, the rocking chair began to move again. Slowly, steadily, as if something unseen had just settled back down. I climbed the stairs without breathing. each step lighter than the last. When I reached the top, I pulled the door shut behind me. The latch clicked softly, almost polite. I leaned against it, listening. For a long time, nothing. Then faintly, from deep below, the hum returned, not calling me this time. Just waiting, it started with the draft, a faint breath of cold air from behind the wardrobe. Winter had settled in, the kind of cold that seeps into wood and stays there. I thought it was just the house settling again. Old walls sighing, bones shifting, but the air coming through that crack felt different. Damp, steady, like something breathing through the wall. I moved the wardrobe aside. It scraped across the floorboards, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Behind it, a door, small, hidden under layers of faded wallpaper. The handle was rusted, a dull oval of iron that left gray dust on my fingers. It shouldn't have been there. The wall was supposed to end here. But the draft pulsed again, as if the house itself was exhaling. I hesitated, just long enough to notice how still everything else had become. Even the clock had stopped. I turned the handle. It resisted for a second, then gave with a soft, tired click. The smell hit first. Cold earth, damp fabric, something faintly metallic like rainwater pooling in rust. I pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. A long, aching note that faded into silence. The room beyond was tiny, barely large enough to stand in. The walls were covered in handprints, small ones, smudged and uneven, pressed deep into the old plaster. Each one looked newer than the last, as if someone had kept adding them, layer by layer, year after year. I reached out, traced the edge of one with my fingertip. It was cool to the touch. The wall beneath felt soft, too soft. The air inside the little room felt thick. It clung to my throat. The only light came from behind me, a pale wash spilling through the doorway, barely reaching the far wall. But the handprints went farther. Down low, near the floor, they curved toward a corner where the light didn't reach. Something about that corner felt wrong. It was too dark, as if the light refused to enter. I crouched, trying to see. The wooden boards creaked under my knees, each one answering the silence. There was a mark there, a dent in the plaster, a faint trail of fingerprints leading into it, then vanishing completely. I leaned closer. The air grew colder. I could see my breath pooling faintly, hovering like mist before dissolving. That's when I heard it. A breath, quiet, slow, not mine. It came from the dark corner. I froze. My lungs refused to move. The air brushed past my cheek, cold and damp, like someone breathing from inches away. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a ripple in the dark, a shape bending slightly with each inhale. I whispered something. I don't remember what. Maybe just the sound of my own name. The breath stopped. Silence spread out like water, thick, uneasy. Then gently, something shifted deeper in the dark. A soft scrape, like a hand dragging across wood. I took a step back, but the door behind me groaned shut, slowly, as if drawn by something unseen. The light dimmed. Only a thin line remained between the door and the frame. I pressed my hand against the wall, searching for balance, but it wasn't dry anymore. The plaster was wet. My palm came away marked. Gray dust clinging to my skin, shaped almost like a fingerprint. The breathing began again. Faster this time, but uneven, shallow. It wasn't coming from the corner anymore. It was right beside me. The air moved against my neck, soft, measured, as if something unseen was studying the rhythm of my own breathing and trying to match it. I didn't turn, couldn't. The floor creaked once, as if weight had shifted near my feet. Then a whisper, faint, wet. It came from the dark. I was here first, my throat tightened. The line of light at the door was gone. The edges of the room blurred into one shape, like the shadows were closing in. I felt something cold press lightly against my wrist. A touch. Small and hesitant like a child's hand, and then it was gone. I stumbled backward. The door opened on its own this time, with a slow sigh of release. The light from the hallway poured back in. The air shifted. The breathing stopped. The handprints were still there, all of them. But one more had joined the wall, fresh and wet, just beside the door frame. Mine. I stepped out, closing the door behind me. The latch clicked softly, as if sealing something in. I pushed the wardrobe back against the wall. It fit perfectly again. No sign of the door, but the draft remained. Cold, rhythmic, breathing, waiting. It started with the fog. Thick and pale, pressing against the glass like breath. The kind of fog that makes the world feel smaller, quieter, as if everything beyond the window has stopped moving. I'd been standing there for a while, watching the field behind the house disappear. The grass, the fence, even the old oak at the edge of the property, all swallowed by the gray. The glass was cold beneath my fingertips. Too cold. Like the frost wasn't just outside, but growing inward. I traced a small circle on the pane, my breath clouding around it. That's when I saw it. Movement. A shadow in the fog. At first, I thought it was the wind. Branches shifting, maybe. But the air outside was still. Completely still, the shape lingered. Just beyond where the fog turned white. Tall. Too straight to be a tree. Too still to be alive. I blinked. And it moved. Not much. Just a few feet closer. But it hadn't walked. It had shifted like the fog had carried it forward. I leaned closer to the glass. My reflection blurred into the gray. I could see my breath, slow and uneven, floating across the pane like mist. The shape was there again. Closer now. Half hidden in the fog, its outline bending wrong. A shoulder too high, a head that tilted at an impossible angle. I blinked again. It was standing at the edge of the field. Still as stone. A pulse of cold ran through the glass, up my fingers, into my arm. It felt like the window was breathing back. I wiped the condensation with my sleeve, but the fog outside clung thicker. The figure didn't move this time. Just watched. At least I think it watched. It was hard to tell where its face should have been. The fog moved around it like water around a rock. Always there, never touching. The air in the room felt heavy, the kind that makes your chest ache to breathe. Every sound dulled. Even the old clock had gone quiet. I took a step back. My feet creaked against the wooden floor. The figure didn't react. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Fog plays tricks. Light bends. I blinked again. It was closer. Halfway across the field now, a faint vibration hummed against the window. Like the glass was straining. I could feel it under my fingertips. A low tremor, steady as a heartbeat. I whispered, "Who's there?" The fog didn't move, but something inside it did. The figure tilted its head slowly, until it mirrored the angle of mine. The breath left my lungs in a rush. The window shuddered. Tiny cracks spread from the corners of the glass, thin as spider silk. The hum grew stronger, rattling through the frame. And then, it stopped. The fog cleared just enough to see. There was nothing in the field. No shadow, no movement, only pale light and wet grass. I stood there watching for any sign of motion. The silence pressed in again, and then softly something tapped from the other side of the glass. Once. Twice. A slow rhythm, too gentle to be the wind. My reflection stared back at me. But the tapping came from just behind it, exactly where the fog met the glass. I leaned closer. The cold bit deep into my skin. I could see faint smears on the other side like fingertips pressed into the frost. 5. Small, perfectly spaced. I blinked, and my reflection blinked back. A half-second too late. The air left the room. Every breath felt stolen, borrowed from something standing too close. I stepped backward. The window stayed still. But the reflection didn't. It stayed where I had been standing. Close to the glass. Too close. It raised its hand. Pressed its palm against the inside of the window. From the wrong side. The fog thickened again, hiding everything but that shape. The palm, the faint outline of a face pressed too close to see clearly. I turned away. But the glass behind me clicked, like nails on ice. The hum returned, deep and low, shaking the window frame once more. And then, a breath, long, drawn out, exhaled from behind the glass. When I looked back, the fog had swallowed the reflection. The window was empty again. Only my handprint remained, pressed against the cold surface, exactly where the other one had been. I wiped it away. But it came back, faint, gray, on the outside this time, waiting. It was late. The kind of late where the air feels still and the night presses close to the windows. The power had gone out hours ago. The house was wrapped in quiet. Only the faint ticking of the walls and the slow drip from the kitchen sink. I lit a candle. The match hissed softly, a brief spark of warmth before the flame took hold. The light trembled, thin and gold against the black. The room came alive in pieces, edges of furniture, the glint of picture frames, the sheen of dust on the table. For a moment, it felt safe, almost beautiful. Then I saw it, the shadow on the far wall. It bent wrong. The flame leaned left, but the shadow stretched right. Too far, like the wall itself was deeper than it should be. I frowned, tilting the candle slightly. The flame obeyed. The shadow didn't. It lingered, a warped outline of something standing behind me. I turned. There was nothing. Only the dark swallowing the corners of the room. My breath fogged the air. The flame fluttered as if startled, and the shadow shifted. It crawled along the wall, slow, deliberate, like a hand dragging its fingers across old paint. I whispered to myself, just tricks of the light. But the light wasn't tricking me. I could feel it. The warmth of the flame and the chill behind me that didn't belong. The candlelight wavered again. The shadow multiplied. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. They stretched up the ceiling, bending into shapes that weren't human. Long, hollow, curling inward as if breathing. The flame dimmed, shrinking low into the wax. I leaned closer, watching the shadows ripple like water. Something in the dark exhaled. The candle flickered, then steadied. I stood still, heart pacing softly in my ears. The walls were covered now, every inch wrapped in movement. The shadows flickered in directions the light never touched. They twisted and turned as if reacting to something unseen. One of them tilted its head. Not a trick of motion, a slow, deliberate gesture. Toward me, I took a step back. The flame stretched toward me too, thin and white, like it wanted to follow. My name drifted through the air. A whisper. Too close. Too low. The candlelight bent toward the sound like a breath pulling it inward. The shadows reached across the wall, their tips brushing over the edges of the furniture, stretching, trembling. My name again. This time, from the dark beyond the door. The wick burned shorter. Wax spilled down my hand, hot against my skin. The shadows no longer matched the room. They moved while everything else stood still, their shapes growing. Arms that weren't arms, faces that flickered between frames. The whisper came again, closer, like a breath brushing my ear. I froze. The flame dimmed further. It pulled inward as if the air itself was inhaling. Every shadow leaned forward, drawn to the shrinking light. The walls seemed to pulse, and for a moment I could see their faces, not formed, not clear, but there. Dozens of them, eyes shaped from darkness, mouths open but silent. The candle sputtered. The flame trembled once, twice, and steadied. The shadows froze. The whisper stopped. Only the quiet hum of my heartbeat filled the air. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The candle burned low, its glow wrapping the room in soft gold again. The walls looked normal. Still. I let out a long, shaky breath. The light flickered with it, and as I exhaled, I realized something. The shadows on the wall. They didn't move when I did. They stayed perfectly still, watching. The candlelight trembled again, and the flame bent forward, as if inhaling me this time. Then everything went dark. It was late autumn. The air inside the house was colder than the air outside. Wood creaked under every breath I took. I had left the lamp on in the parlor, a soft gold light spilling across the rug. It made the room look smaller somehow, as if the walls were pressing in. In the corner, near the fireplace, stood an old wooden chair. It had always been there. Carved edges, faded varnish. The kind of thing you stop noticing after years. But that night, it moved. Just a little. A scrape across the floorboards. Slow, deliberate. I froze. The air felt thick, as if the house had stopped breathing with me. I waited. The chair didn't move again. The fire was out, but the faint smell of ash lingered. I could almost hear the wood cooling. Then, tap. Soft. Like a fingernail against the armrest. I told myself it was settling wood. Old houses make old sounds. But when I turned back, the chair wasn't where it had been. It had shifted. An inch, maybe 2, angled slightly toward me. I blinked hard, trying to remember if I'd imagined it. Another tap, this time from the floor, as if something beneath was trying to rise. I stepped closer. Each board groaned underfoot. The air felt damp, tasting faintly of dust and cold varnish. The closer I got, the more wrong the chair looked. It leaned slightly backward, as if caught mid-step. Its legs rested unevenly, imprints visible where it had dragged itself. I reached out. The wood was freezing. A dry chill that bit at my skin. The moment my fingers brushed the backrest. It moved. A sharp scrape like claws dragging across the floor. It slid away from me, half a foot back into the corner. I stumbled. The air shuddered with silence. Tap, tap, tap. Each beat matched my pulse. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the chair. It stood still again, but I could swear the light around it was shifting. A faint shimmer, like heat over pavement. The tapping began again. Faster this time. Inside the wood, inside the hollow space of the parlor walls, something was pacing. The sound circled the room, always returning to the chair. Always stopping just short of touching it. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the faint creak of the chair's joints, as if someone had just sat down. The seat sank slightly. I watched the cushion dip, then rise again, slow and steady, as though it was breathing. I wanted to run. But the doorway felt far. Too far. The chair began to move again. Not sliding this time. Walking. Tiny steps. Measured. Uneven. The legs lifted and settled with a low thud against the boards. It crossed the rug, each tap softer than the last. I backed into the hall, my hand brushing the wall for balance. It stopped halfway to me. The lamp flickered, casting 2 shadows. Mine. And another, smaller one, resting just behind the chair. I stared at it until my eyes burned. The shadow's head tilted, a slow, curious motion. Then, tap, 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 from the backrest this time. Closer. I couldn't breathe. I whispered again, "Stop." The light dimmed. For a second, everything in the room seemed to lean forward. The chair, the walls, the air itself. And then it stopped moving. The tapping ceased. Only silence. I stepped backward once, twice until my hand found the doorknob. The air behind me felt colder, as if something had followed me halfway. I turned off the lamp. Dark swallowed everything. In that stillness, I listened. I waited. Tap a single note from the parlor floor. Then nothing. I closed the door. Pressed my palm against it. The wood was still trembling, and from the other side, softly, like fingertips tracing along the grain, came 3 more taps. Slow. Patient. Waiting. It was late winter. The air inside my room felt still. Too still. Outside, snow pressed against the window like a heavy breath. Inside, the heater hummed low, uneven, like it was trying to match my heartbeat. I couldn't sleep. The room was dim, washed in pale blue from the streetlight outside. Every shape looked softer, but stranger. That's when I heard it. A rustling, faint, dry, like cloth brushing against cloth. It came from the closet. I turned my head slowly, half hoping it would stop. But it didn't. It grew steadier, a patient shiver of fabric moving in the dark. For a long moment, I listened. The sound seemed to breathe in and out, like something alive was pressing through the clothes. My mind tried to make it ordinary. Drafts, mice, the weight of winter coats shifting on their hangers, but the air didn't move. And the coats didn't hang that low. I sat up, my blanket still clutched around me. The floor was cold under my feet, a kind of cold that feels aware. The rustling stopped. I waited. Then slowly something inside the closet sighed. Not a voice, just the faint exhale of something learning how to mimic one. I whispered into the dark. "Hello?" Nothing, only silence. But the moment I blinked, the clothes shifted again. They swayed lightly, left to right, as if stirred by invisible hands. And for an instant, the folds of fabric shaped something else. A shoulder, a head, a face half turned toward me. My breath caught. The air in my throat turned sharp, like breathing through frost. Then a whisper. Close. Too close. Look closer. I didn't move. The voice was soft, woven between the rustling. As if the sound itself had spoken, it promised something. Something quiet and dangerous. Secrets, answers, maybe comfort. I stood up anyway. Not out of courage, but because stillness felt worse. Each step toward the closet stretched the moment thinner. The wood beneath me creaked. The shadows bent toward the sound. I reached the door. My hand hovered near the handle. The rustling grew louder now, like the whole collection of clothes was breathing in unison. The whisper came again, a low hum through the seams. "Open it." The word slipped into me like cold water. It didn't feel like fear. It felt like invitation. I turned the knob. The hinges groaned softly, like they didn't want to be disturbed. Inside, nothing. Just coats, jackets, a few hanging shirts swaying gently. All still, but the smell, it was wrong. Like dust soaked in old rain. I ran my hand between the clothes. Each sleeve brushed my fingers, dry and lifeless. Then the rustling began again. Not around me this time, but deeper inside, beyond where the closet ended. There shouldn't have been space there. Just a wall. Yet the sound kept coming, like someone was stepping through layers of fabric, dragging their hands along the hangers. I leaned in, barely breathing. The cold air pressed against my face. Something moved behind the coats, a faint shape, just out of focus. I could hear it whispering, not words, but rhythm, a pattern that felt like speech. I reached forward, fingers trembling, parting the clothes inch by inch. Empty, only silence now. Only the soft swing of my own movements. Then a breath brushed my ear. Not warm. Not human, just presence. I jerked back, nearly stumbling into the bed. The clothes swayed hard this time, like someone had just walked through them. And again, the whisper, "You shouldn't have looked." The closet door creaked inward, as if drawn by something unseen. I pushed it shut hard, and it shuddered once before latching. The rustling didn't stop. It only quieted, retreating deeper into the wood, into the stillness behind the wall. I sat there watching the door in the blue half-light. The air in the room felt heavier now, like the space inside the closet was breathing slower than I was. Every few minutes, the faintest shuffle, a soft brushing, a reminder that something was still there, waiting, listening. And when I finally lay back down, eyes half closed, the whisper came one last time. So quiet. I almost thought it was my own thought. Next time, don't stop. It was late autumn. The air carried the scent of cold dust and wood rot. I'd come to the attic to clean, but mostly to remember. The boards creaked under every step. Thin streaks of pale light pushed through the slats in the roof, turning the dust into slow-falling snow. I hadn't been up there in years. Everything looked smaller. Boxes stacked unevenly, a cracked lamp, old sheets covering forgotten furniture. And then I saw it. A mirror. Tall. Oval. Its frame carved with shapes that looked like vines or veins. It leaned against the far wall, its glass dulled by years of neglect. I wiped the surface with my sleeve. The dust clung to my skin, dry and cold. When the glass cleared, I saw myself. But not quite. My reflection was slower. A fraction off, like it was thinking about how to move. I tilted my head slightly. The reflection followed, but the delay was longer this time. Something about the air shifted. It grew thick, heavy with silence. The attic window trembled softly in its frame. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, the old house exhaled. I told myself it was just the light. Just my eyes. Just fatigue. But then, someone appeared behind me, a shape, faint, standing just over my shoulder. I froze. The air in my throat turned brittle. My skin prickled, every nerve waiting for movement. I could see it clearly in the mirror. A dark outline, taller than me, its edges soft, like mist trapped inside glass. But the attic behind me was empty. I turned around. Nothing. Only shadows. The slow swing of a hanging cord, the quiet creak of wood settling. When I looked back, the figure was gone, just me again, except my reflection wasn't breathing. It stood perfectly still, shoulders stiff, chest unmoving, and then it smiled. I didn't. The corners of its mouth lifted, slowly, like it was testing how far a human face could stretch. My heart stumbled. I stepped back, but the reflection stayed. It didn't follow. It just kept smiling. The attic light flickered. For a second, everything turned white, then darker than before. My reflection blinked once, and its eyes stayed open longer than mine. I could feel something behind the glass now, a quiet pressure, like breath pressed against cold air. I whispered, "Barely, who are you?" The lips in the mirror didn't move this time, but something inside the reflection shifted, like the glass rippled under invisible fingers. A low hum began to fill the attic. Not from the house, but from the mirror itself. It sounded like static, or whispering too close to your ear. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. The reflection leaned forward, its face inches from the surface. I could see every detail now. The hollow under its eyes, the faint tremor of something alive trying to mimic me. It lifted its hand. I lifted mine. But the motion wasn't the same. Its fingers twitched wrong, bent in places they shouldn't bend. For a heartbeat, our fingertips nearly touched the glass. The hum stopped, and then it smiled again, wide enough that the corners of its mouth split faintly, like cracks in porcelain. I stepped back so fast I hit a box behind me. Dust burst into the air. The mirror stayed still. But the reflection, it was gone. I stared at the glass. Only emptiness looked back. Then, slowly, my image faded back in, but it didn't match me anymore. Its clothes were darker. Its eyes wrong. Slightly too open, too aware. I backed toward the stairs, keeping my eyes on the mirror. The air smelled of iron now, old and sharp, and just before I turned to leave, the reflection lifted its hand again and waved. I ran. The attic door slammed behind me. The sound echoed through the house, followed by silence so complete I could hear my pulse in it. Hours later, when I dared to look again from below, the attic was dark, but the mirror. I could see the faintest shimmer of light sliding across its surface, like someone was still moving inside it, watching, waiting for me to come back. It was raining that night, soft and steady, the kind of rain that blurs the edges of things. I'd left the hall light on, a dull yellow glow stretching across the wooden floor. That's when I saw it, a key. Sitting alone on the table by the stairs, it wasn't there before. I was sure of it, old brass, dark with rust, its teeth jagged, uneven. It looked ancient. I touched it, cold, like something pulled from the ground. The metal left a faint orange mark on my skin. I should have ignored it. I should have thrown it away. But something about it felt heavy, important. When I turned it over, I noticed the ring, thin and blackened, with a single thread still attached, as if it had once been tied to something. The house was quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. Then, somewhere down the hall, I heard a click. Like a latch giving way. My stomach tightened. There were only 3 doors in that hallway, and all of them locked for as long as I'd lived there. Except now, one of them was open. Barely. Just enough for a strip of darkness to spill out. I picked up the key. The metal scraped faintly against my palm as I moved closer. Each step made the floorboards sigh. The air near that door felt colder. Still, it smelled of old wood and something damp, like forgotten places. I pushed it open. The hinges groaned. And there it was. A hallway I'd never seen before. Long, narrow. The walls seemed to tilt inward, as if the house had grown a spine. Faded wallpaper peeled like shedding skin. And somewhere deep within, something moved. Not loudly, just enough for the air to change. I whispered into the dark. "Hello?" My voice didn't echo, it just disappeared. Then came the laughter. Distant. Light. Like children playing far away. It shouldn't have comforted me, but it did. For a moment, I took another step. The floor dipped slightly under my weight. Moisture beaded along the wall, cold against my fingertips. The key trembled in my hand, not from me, but as if it remembered something. I stopped halfway down the corridor. There was another door at the end, smaller than the rest. Wood swollen with age. The laughter came again, clearer now. And closer, I raised the key. It fit perfectly into the lock. It turned without resistance. The door creaked open to reveal a small room. Empty, except for the smell. Wet earth, and something faintly sweet like rotting flowers. The laughter had stopped. The silence that followed felt alive, like it was waiting for me to breathe first. In the corner of the room, the floor dipped into shadow. A shape, maybe a hole or a stain, was spreading slowly, like something waking up. I stepped back. My pulse stuttered, and then behind me, a soft tap. I turned. The hall I'd come from was gone. Only darkness remained, thick and soundless. I called out again, but my voice came back wrong, delayed and lower. Something brushed my shoulder. Faint. A touch that lingered too long. I stumbled back into the room and the key slipped from my hand. It hit the floor with a hollow sound. When I looked down, it wasn't the same key anymore. Shinier, newer, like it had been waiting to be used. I bent down slowly. And in the reflection of the metal, I saw movement. Someone standing right behind me. I turned. Nothing. But the laughter began again. Not distant this time. All around me. Soft, circling. The door slammed shut. The echo swallowed everything. And then there was only silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing back in the main hall. The key lay quietly on the table, exactly where I'd first seen it. Only now, it was clean, polished, waiting. And the hall, the one that shouldn't exist, was gone. I tell myself it was a dream. But sometimes at night, when the rain begins to fall again, I hear faint laughter from somewhere in the house, and each morning, the key has moved just a little closer to my bedroom door. The house feels older at night. It settles differently. Wood sighs. The walls seem to breathe. I sat by the fireplace again, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and time. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows. The flames inside the hearth moved slow, gold turning to orange, orange deepening into red. It was quiet enough to hear my own pulse. Quiet enough to imagine the fire listening back. That's when I heard it. A voice. Soft. Inside the walls. At first, I thought it was the wind. But the sound formed words. A name, not mine. Spoken gently, like someone remembering. I leaned forward, the chair creaking under me. The flames shifted, throwing long shadows across the room. The voice came again. Clearer this time. Another name, a date. Then a word that didn't sound like anything I knew. It lingered, almost warm against my ear. I glanced at the fire. The wood cracked, and a piece fell inward, sending sparks spiraling upward. For a second in the glow, I saw something in the flames, a face. Not detailed, just the shape of it. The hollow of eyes, a suggestion of a mouth. It flickered once, then it was gone. The air thickened. The warmth of the fire turned sharp, too dry to breathe in. The voices didn't stop. They layered. Low murmurs sliding under one another, like a conversation I wasn't meant to overhear. I could pick out fragments, warnings, pleas, a laugh that didn't belong here. My hands felt heavy in my lap. Every movement felt slow, like the air was syrup. The fire hissed. The flames bent sideways as if pushed by something unseen. Then one of the logs rolled closer to the edge, and I saw it again, a shadow moving within the light, not behind it, inside it. It leaned forward, reaching toward the edge of the hearth until the flame itself seemed to take a shape. I blinked. It was gone. The whispers stopped. Only the faint hum of the chimney remained, rattling with the wind. I tried to move, but I couldn't look away. The fire had changed color. Paler now, like candlelight strained through water. Something was wrong with the reflection in the glass of the mantel clock. It wasn't my face. It was watching me. Unmoving, expressionless, I turned. Nothing. Only the soft hiss of embers. Then the whispers started again, closer, behind me. A breath, so faint I could feel it more than hear it. The words brushed my ear. 3 syllables. A name I didn't know. I didn't turn. Couldn't. The fire twisted once more, and I saw them, dozens of faces. Each one fading in and out, formed from smoke and light. Some crying. Some silent. All staring toward me, I whispered, "What do you want?" The air trembled. And then, as softly as before, one voice answered. "Remember." The flames dimmed, dropping into a deep orange glow. The faces vanished into the smoke. The heat drained away, leaving only the faint smell of ash and cold air. The clock ticked once, then stopped. I sat there for a long time. The fire burned down to nothing. No voices, no warmth. Only the faint impression that the walls were still listening. Before I left the room, I looked once more into the blackened hearth. The ashes had settled strangely, a pattern of lines and curves, shaped like letters. A date. The same one I had heard whispered, and when I blinked, I could have sworn the embers formed the outline of a face just for a moment, smiling, faintly. Then it was gone. It always starts the same way, quiet, still, too still, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. It was late, just past 3. The air in the house felt heavier than it should, cold, even though the heat hadn't gone out. I remember looking at the clock above the hallway door. 3:13 a.m. The hands didn't move. At first, I didn't notice. It was only when I glanced at the clock on the mantel. Same time. 3:13 and the one by my bed. 3:13. Every single one. Stopped. I waited. Listened. Nothing. No ticking. No hum of machinery. Just the faint, low hum of the house breathing around me. My eyes adjusted to the dark. The walls looked different somehow. Stretched, too long, like time itself had gone thin. I walked down the hall. Each step echoed more than it should. The floorboards felt soft beneath my feet, like walking on skin instead of wood. I reached for the clock by the stairs. Its glass was cold. Too cold. A thin layer of frost had crept over the edges. Even though the air was dry, I touched the second hand. It didn't move. But I felt a vibration under my fingertips. A pulse. Slow, steady, but not mine. Then, something shifted in the room. A shadow. It slid across the wall, passing over the furniture, the ceiling, me. It didn't come from anything. No light changed. It just moved, and as it passed, I heard it. Tick once, sharp. Then silence again. I turned toward the living room. The grandfather clock stood there, tall, silent, frozen at 3:13. Its pendulum hung mid-swing, like it had been caught halfway between breaths. The air was thick. I could smell metal. Rust and something faintly sweet. The shadow lingered near the clock's base. I thought I saw movement inside the glass. A reflection that didn't belong. It leaned forward, mirroring me. Except it blinked. Then the ticking started again, faint. Uneven. Tick. Tick! But none of the clocks moved. I could feel it instead. In the walls, under the floor, inside my ribs. Every tick vibrated through me as if the sound came from under my skin. I wanted to run, but the hall stretched longer now. The doorway looked further away than before. Something was wrong with the air, like it resisted movement, thick as syrup. I blinked hard. The shadow was gone. The ticking stopped. Every clock in the house began to hum, a low, hollow resonance, like they were holding their breath together. Then one of them sighed. It was soft, almost human. The hands on the hallway clock twitched, then fell backward, spinning in reverse. Chauterful. 3:11. 3:10. All of them followed, their faces whirring quietly, until they froze again. Not at 0, not at midnight, but somewhere between moments. I stood still. The walls felt closer now, the air too thin to breathe. I looked back at the grandfather clock. Its glass had fogged from the inside, and in that pale film, someone had drawn a handprint, small, faint, pressed against the other side. Then, 3 slow knocks. 1, 2, 3. The glass cracked where the print had been. I stepped back. Every clock in the house groaned at once, a deep mechanical exhale, then silence. Real silence. The kind that swallows everything. When I finally looked again, the handprint was gone. The glass unbroken, but the time hadn't changed. 13 a.m., the hour that doesn't move. The minute that won't pass. I sat down on the floor and waited for the next sound. There wasn't one. Only the faint hum of the house, and my own heart struggling to keep its rhythm. Sometimes I think I still hear it. That missing tick, the one that doesn't belong to any clock, it comes just before I fall asleep, right when the room goes still, always at 3:13. The fog came early that night, thicker than usual, heavy, like wet wool pulled across the garden. I could barely see past the porch steps. The world ended in pale gray, soft and endless. The air tasted like metal, cold, still. I stood there for a while, listening. The house behind me felt asleep, but the earth outside didn't. Something moved in the fog. A shuffle, a step, then another, slow, measured, circling. I froze. The grass brushed against my ankles, damp, cool. Each step out there had weight, like feet pressing into soil, but no shape followed. I whispered once. A name I didn't mean to say. It disappeared into the mist like breath into water. Then, silence. The fog swayed, curling at the edges. I could almost see a figure, half-formed, as if someone stood behind frosted glass. I blinked, and it was gone. But the footsteps came again. Closer now, soft, dragging. They stopped when I turned. The stillness hummed against my skin. Every sound felt distant, like I was underwater, hearing the world breathe from far away. I stepped off the porch. The ground sank slightly beneath me. Each blade of grass was slick with dew, clinging to my feet like tiny threads. The fog swallowed me whole. No horizon, no direction, only white, and that faint, steady rustle, like someone pacing just beyond reach. I called out again. Nothing answered, only that strange rhythm. Step, pause, step. It circled me, invisible but close enough that I could feel the air shift. There was a smell now, wet soil, and something faintly sweet like decaying flowers. I reached out. My fingers brushed cold air. Then something brushed back, not skin, not fabric, something softer, like fog that resisted. My breath caught in my throat. A shadow flickered across the mist, tall, but bending wrong, like it couldn't decide how to stand. Its edges quivered, breaking apart and reforming. Half there, half not. It tilted, as if it was listening. The footsteps stopped. The silence afterward was heavy, like the whole garden was holding its breath. Then, from far off, another set of steps, lighter, faster, answering, Shapes began to form inside the fog. 3, no 4, moving together. Their outlines shimmered, dripping into the ground like liquid glass. For a second, I thought they had faces. But when I squinted, they dissolved. Only the feeling stayed. That they were watching, curious, waiting. The air grew colder. My skin prickled. Something in my chest told me not to move. I could hear my heartbeat now, slow, uneven. The figures drifted closer. One of them reached forward, its hand, if it was a hand, breaking apart into strands of fog. It stopped just before touching me. Then, a whisper, too soft to be words. A tone more than a voice, like someone breathing my name into my ear from behind the mist. I turned fast. No one there. But when I looked back, the fog had shifted. The shapes were gone. Only my footprints remained in the wet grass, and others circling me, dozens of them, pressed deep into the ground, leading nowhere. The fog began to lift, thin and trembling, like smoke losing its strength. The garden returned in pieces, fence, trees, the pale light of the porch. I was alone again, except for the faint echo of those steps, still circling, somewhere in the distance, too far to see, too close to ignore. And when the last of the fog drifted away, I saw it. A mark in the soil near my feet, half a footprint, half something else. Longer, twisted, pressed deep, as if it had leaned close before disappearing. The night stayed quiet after that, but I never went back outside. Sometimes, when the weather turns cold and the fog creeps in from the woods, I still hear them, those careful circling steps, just beyond the light, waiting for me to turn again. The attic feels older than the rest of the house, like time moves differently up here, slower. Dust floats in the air, turning the single beam of moonlight into something heavy, almost solid. It smells of wood rot and candle wax left to melt into itself, the kind of scent that clings to skin. I shouldn't have come up tonight. But the humming started again. Soft, constant, coming from the far corner where the old chest waits. It's always been there long before I moved in. Wedged beneath the slanted roof, its brass corners dulled, its lock rusted but unbroken. Sometimes when the house is quiet, it hums, not like a machine. More like breath, slow, measured, alive. I walk closer. The floorboards complain beneath my feet, each one sighing like it remembers my weight. The hum deepens. It vibrates through the air, a low thrum that settles in my chest. The key sits where I left it, a bent little thing I found weeks ago in the drawer of an empty dresser. I never meant to use it, but tonight, it feels like the chest wants me to. I kneel. The air around it feels warmer, as if the wood is breathing. There's a faint shimmer, like heat rising from the surface. When I touch the lock, the hum stops. Everything goes still. Even the dust in the air seems to hang, waiting. I turn the key. It doesn't fight me. It clicks, softly, like it was expecting this moment. The lid lifts with a sigh. The smell hits me first, sweet and rotten at the same time. Decay and wax, old perfume, memories that shouldn't smell at all. Inside, there are objects, familiar ones. A red ribbon frayed at one end, a photograph faded almost white, a silver ring that fits my finger perfectly, and a candle, half burned, its wick curled into ash. My hand trembles when I pick it up. The wax is soft, still warm, as if it was just lit. The humming returns, but now it's inside my head. Each item hums differently, a different pitch, like they remember who touched them last. I try to remember why these things feel like mine, but the memories won't form. They dissolve, like smoke when you reach for it. There's something else at the bottom, a piece of paper, folded carefully. Edges yellowed, words smudged but visible. The handwriting. It's mine. I read only the first line. Don't open it again. The humming turns sharp, like static pressed against my skull. The candle trembles in my hand. Its flame. There's a flame now. It burns without a spark, without heat. A pale, living light. And in that glow, the photograph changes. The face appears, half-shadowed, smiling. I know that smile, but I don't remember from where. My throat tightens. The attic feels smaller, the air thick, like breathing through cloth. The hum becomes a voice, low, layered. It whispers something I almost understand, something that feels like my name. I drop the candle. The flame doesn't die. It rolls across the floor, leaving no mark, only that steady hum, vibrating through the wood, through my knees, through my teeth. The chest lid begins to close on its own, slowly, carefully, as if tucking something back to sleep. The key slides out, clatters onto the floor. The hum fades until it's gone. I stare at the chest. It looks harmless again, quiet, still, but the candle has vanished. And the smell of wax still lingers, fresh and faint, like something recently extinguished. I back away, one step, then another. The moonlight shifts. Something moves in its reflection. Not me, but close. It watches from the chest's brass plate. Smiling softly, the hum begins again. Barely there, like a heartbeat coming from inside the wood, and this time, it doesn't stop when I leave. It follows me down the stairs, all the way into the dark. It's late, past midnight. The house feels hollow, like something has been pulled out of it. The air hangs still in the corridor. Long, narrow. Every door closed, every window sealed. I walk slowly, bare feet against the cold floor. The tiles hold the chill of winter, even though it's spring. A faint hum runs through the hallway lights. Not white or yellow, but a pale, bluish glow. Like light that's been drained of warmth, it flickers. Once, then again. Each time the shadows stretch longer. They reach across the walls, bend around corners, slide beneath the doors. My breath fogs in front of me. It shouldn't. The air feels colder with each step. There's a faint smell. Dust and ozone. The scent of something electric, barely alive. The lights buzz, then dim. The corridor sinks into half-darkness. At the far end, something moves. A shape. Human in outline, but not quite. It walks past the first doorway slowly, shoulders brushing the wall. I stop breathing. The hum deepens. Every bulb along the ceiling trembles, each one flickering out of rhythm, as if the light itself is afraid. The figure moves again, closer this time. Its shadow stretches out before it, longer than its body should allow. The pale light catches its edge. I see a shoulder, an arm, a head that turns slightly, as if listening. The air feels thick, too quiet. I can hear the tiny rustle of my pulse. Then, the lights die. For a heartbeat, there's nothing. Only the smell of cold metal and the faint trace of my own breath. When the lights return, it's standing in the middle of the corridor, still, facing me, not moving, not blinking. Just there, its face is wrong. The light doesn't touch it, like the skin absorbs it, drinks it in. I take one step back. The pale glow flickers with me, as if it reacts. My shadow curls behind me, pulling in the opposite direction. It moves before I do. The figure tilts its head. The motion is slow, curious, almost human. Then the hum stops. Everything stills. The silence is too heavy, so thick it hums inside my ears. I wait for something. Anything. A flicker. A movement. A breath. But there's nothing. The light sharpens for a moment, and I realize the figure is gone. The corridor is empty. Only the blue light remains, vibrating faintly through the air, buzzing against my skin. I exhale, and it fogs again. I look down. My shadow stretches toward the far end. It shouldn't, not from this angle, not from where I'm standing. The lights flicker once more. And there, at the edge of the glow, a second shadow moves. It's not mine. It walks away slowly, toward the dark end of the hall. The hum returns, faint, soft, almost like a sigh. The light pulses one last time, then fades to gray. I'm left standing in the silence, listening, waiting, and in that still air, for just a moment I think I see it again. A pale figure, watching from the reflection in the window, unmoving, patient, as if waiting for the lights to flicker one more time. It's quiet tonight. The kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the house is listening. The air smells of dust and glue, old wallpaper, yellowed and curling at the corners. The edges breathe when the wind moves through the cracks. I run my hand along the wall. The paper feels soft, fragile, like skin. The lamp beside me hums faintly. Its light is dim, pale, barely enough to chase the shadows away. In the silence, something shifts. A faint rustling behind the wallpaper, like something small, moving. I press my ear closer. There's a whisper, faint, trembling, almost too soft to catch. It's not words at first, just breath. But the breath changes, shapes itself. I can hear it now. Small phrases, broken. Like the wall is trying to remember how to speak. Still here. Don't peel it. Please. The voice isn't coming from beyond the wall. It's inside it, layered between the paper and the plaster. I take a step back. My skin prickles. The air feels colder, thicker, like I've stepped into a place I shouldn't have found. The whisper fades, then returns, softer. Repeating something I can't fully understand, I move closer again. The edge of the wallpaper curls outward, revealing a thin slit of darkness beneath. I don't remember it being there before. I reach out. My fingertips brush the corner. The paper sticks to me slightly, as if it doesn't want to let go. When I pull, it peels away with a slow, wet sound. Behind it, faint lines appear, carved into the wall. Words, not painted, etched. They run in uneven rows, some shallow, some deep enough to draw dust from the plaster. I lean closer. The words blur together, but one phrase stands out. Do not answer them. The whisper grows louder. More voices now, weaving through each other, low and trembling like breath against my ear. They speak in fragments, half-words, regrets. My chest tightens. I can feel every inhale echo through the room. The wallpaper ripples slightly, as if something underneath is breathing with me. I whisper back before I can stop myself. Who's there? The room exhales. A long, slow breath seeps from the wall. The paper flutters against my hand. Then, a new sound. Soft, wet, like fingertips brushing fabric. Behind me. I freeze. The whispers stop all at once. The air grows cold enough to sting. Every hair on my arm lifts. Something touches my hand. Cold, smooth, not air, not living. A hand slides against mine from behind, slowly, almost gently. It's colder than anything I've ever felt. Like touching something left too long in the dark. I can't breathe. The hand doesn't pull or grab. It just lingers there, resting over my skin. A silent presence. Then it's gone. The warmth rushes back, but the smell changes. Candle wax, and something rotten beneath it. I turn. No one's there. Only the faint flicker of the lamp and the pale wallpaper curling inward. The whisper returns, softer this time. Barely words. Cover it. Please. I look at the torn corner still clinging to my hand. The carved words on the wall seem deeper now, fresh, wet in the grooves. I press the paper back against it. It sticks instantly, as if the wall is grateful. The whisper fades into the distance like a breath being drawn away. The air still hums, but quieter now. Almost peaceful. I back away slowly. The light flickers once, and in that brief pulse I see something beneath the paper. A shape. A face, maybe. Turned toward me. When the light steadies, the wall is smooth again. The words are gone. I can still feel the chill of that hand. Though, lingering, waiting, and in the stillness of the room, as the glue dries and the wallpaper settles back into place, a single whisper remains. Faint. Close. It's colder down here than I remember. The kind of cold that sits inside your bones. The basement smells like rust and damp earth. Concrete floor, bare bulbs swinging overhead. The air hums softly, like it's waiting for something. I don't come down here often. The steps groan when I move, old wood pressing against old nails. I pause halfway down. Everything feels too still, like the room is holding its breath. Then, the door slams, hard, violent. The echo folds over itself, bouncing through the basement walls like a trapped scream. I freeze. My throat tightens. The light above me flickers once, twice, then stutters into a frantic pulse. The shadows on the floor stretch and twist, jerking with each flicker. For a second, it feels like they're breathing. I whisper my own name under my breath, just to hear something human. No answer. Only the quiet hiss of the bulb, straining to stay alive. Something moves in the far corner, not loud. Just the faint shift of weight, a soft scrape on concrete. Then footsteps, slow, measured. They move away from me first, retreating deeper into the dark. My hand grips the railing. The metal feels damp, cold enough to sting. The footsteps stop. And then, they start again, coming closer this time. The rhythm doesn't sound right. Each step feels uneven, like someone walking with a limp. Dragging something heavy behind, the light flickers faster now, flashing pale light across the room in quick, sick pulses. Each time the light hits, the shadows jump closer. Each time it fades, they linger where they shouldn't. I take a step back toward the stairs. But the air feels thick, almost solid. I can't tell if the sound is getting louder, or if the walls are just pushing it closer to me. There's a shape near the far wall now. Tall, wrongly shaped. It doesn't move, but the shadow beneath it does. Stretching, curling upward along the wall like smoke crawling in reverse. The footsteps stop. Silence falls heavy, dense enough to hear my own breath. For a moment, the only sound is the faint drip of water somewhere in the dark. Then the light bulb pops. The world falls black. I can still see the afterimage burned into my vision. That stretched shadow pressed against the wall. But now it's moving without light. Something brushes past my shoulder. Not skin. Not cloth, just cold. The kind of cold that feels alive. I step backward, but the space behind me feels different now. Too open, like the stairs are gone. I whisper again. Nothing answers. The air trembles with faint movement. A breath that isn't mine. Slow. Close. I can almost hear it forming words. Or maybe it's just the air finding its way through the cracks. I take another step back. My heel catches the first stair. Relief floods through me. And then I hear it. Footsteps again. Right in front of me now. Closer than before. Each step lands perfectly between the beats of my heart. Then they stop. The silence that follows feels alive, like it's waiting for me to breathe first. When the light flickers once more, just once, I see it. The shadow pressed flat against the wall. Its head tilted. Its arms spread wide, fingers stretched like cracks in the plaster. It shouldn't move, but it does. The outline ripples slightly, like something behind it is pushing to get out. Then the bulb dies for good. There's a single breath near my ear, a whisper so soft it could almost be my imagination. Then, silence again, the kind that makes you question if you were ever making noise at all. I climb the stairs slowly, each step a careful prayer not to break the quiet. The doorknob is cold when I reach it. Too cold. When I pull, it doesn't move. Something holds it shut from the other side. I press my forehead to the wood. The faint hum returns, vibrating through the grain, and behind me, down in the dark, the footsteps start again. Not rushing. Just pacing, waiting. I don't turn around. I just listen until the sound fades. And the silence swallows everything whole. It's late. Past midnight, maybe. The house is quiet in that strange, uneven way, like it's listening. The only light comes from a single candle on the table. Its flame sways softly, breathing against the walls. The wax has almost reached the end. A tiny pool forms around the wick, thick and trembling like it doesn't want to die. I watch it flicker. Each movement throws new shapes across the room. The shadows stretch and curl, faces for a second, then nothing. The air smells of smoke and old wood. Something faint beneath it, too, like dust warmed by a slow fire. The chair beneath me creaks when I shift. The candlelight trembles, and the whole room feels smaller for it. Somewhere near the ceiling, a soft whisper moves. Not words, not yet. Just breath passing through the dark. It circles the room, pressing against the corners, then fades back into silence. I tell myself it's the wind. It's always easier when it's the wind, but the window's shut. The air is still, and the whisper returns. This time it's closer, behind me. Inside the quiet between heartbeats, my name maybe, or something shaped like it. The candle jerks suddenly, flame bending sideways as though pulled. Wax spills down the side like tears, freezing into pale ridges. I stare into the flame until my eyes water. It flutters again, wild now. The shadows around the room begin to move too fast. For a moment, I can't tell what's alive. What's real? The whispers rise, overlapping, tumbling. Too many voices, too close. Each one breathes a half-sentence unfinished. Stay, don't, remember. They twist together, growing louder until they're not words anymore. Just noise, spilling over the edges of my mind. The flame flares bright, throwing the walls into white light. And then, everything stops. Silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. Even the air feels held still. The candle steadies again, a small, calm glow in the dark. The shadows no longer move, but the room doesn't feel empty. It feels aware, as if something lingers just outside the circle of light. I can feel it there, watching from the dark edge of the room. The air carries a weight now, a thickness against my skin. The candle crackles softly. A tiny spark jumps, and for one heartbeat, the flame grows tall enough to touch the ceiling. I see it then. A figure, standing in the farthest corner. Still. Silent. Its face hidden behind the trembling glow. It doesn't move. It doesn't need to. The candle lowers again, and the figure sinks back into shadow, like a breath being taken away. I whisper into the empty room. "Who's there?" Nothing answers. Only the faint hum of the wick struggling to live. The air around me chills, sinking deep into my chest. Each breath leaves me slower, fainter. The whisper returns once more. But this time it comes from the candle itself. A low sigh, rising through the flame, as though the wick is speaking. It says something I can't understand. And yet, I feel it settle inside me. The candle flickers again. Harder. Each pulse feels like the room exhaling. I can't tell if it's the air moving or something brushing against my arm. It's soft, cold, familiar. The whisper fades into a hum, then silence. The flame bends one last time, then steadies. Completely still for a few long seconds. It burns without movement, a single, perfect shape. Then, as if someone pinched it out between two fingers, the light dies. Darkness folds over me, heavy, absolute. I can hear my heart beat again. And something else, a quiet breath just behind it. It lingers there, close to my ear. Closer than the dark itself. And in that silence, I finally understand. The room isn't empty. It never was, it's just waiting. For the next flicker, morning came slowly. A pale light spilled through the curtains, soft and thin, like it didn't belong here. For a while, I just sat on the edge of the bed, watching dust float in the still air. Everything felt quiet. Too quiet. The house looked the same, but it wasn't. Something had changed overnight. The air felt heavy, almost damp, like the walls had been breathing while I slept. When I stood, the floorboards sighed under my weight. Each step carried a faint echo, a whisper that didn't fade right away. Down the hallway, the doors were all slightly open. Not wide, just enough to show a sliver of shadow within. I remember closing them last night. I was sure I did. The kitchen smelled faintly of smoke and wax. The candle from before had melted into a pale puddle, its wick frozen mid-flicker. Even that small thing felt wrong, like it had died too suddenly. Outside, the morning fog pressed against the windows, thick and unmoving. The world beyond was nothing but white blur. I thought I heard something then. A door hinge stretching in another room. Not slamming, not forced, just moving, on its own. The sound came again, a slow, dragging swing, and then a faint click. I turned toward the living room. The light there was softer, a pale blue drifting through the curtains. The air felt colder near the stairs. My breath trembled in front of me, tiny clouds fading before they reached the floor. Every room carried traces of the night. The hallway rug slightly moved, a picture frame tilted sideways, the faint scent of candle wax lingering in corners. Even the silence had texture, a kind of hum beneath it, as though something unseen still lingered, watching quietly. I stopped by the study door. It was halfway open. Inside, the shadows seemed deeper, stretching toward me. I could hear something faint, a soft, steady rhythm. Like breathing, but it wasn't mine. I held still. The sound paused, too. I stepped closer. The floor creaked and the door drifted wider, slowly, as if pulled by the air. The window in the study was covered in condensation. No wind, no movement, just that faint breath, hovering somewhere near the desk, and then a small sound, a sigh. Right beside me, I turned. Nothing there, but the air shifted. It brushed my arm, cold and certain, as if someone had just passed. I whispered into the space around me, "Who's here?" The question hung for a moment, then dissolved into silence. I waited. A few heartbeats. Then the door behind me closed, gently, deliberately. The sound echoed through the house, bouncing down the hallway like a warning. I should have felt fear. But I didn't. Not really. It felt more like recognition. Like the house had been holding its breath, waiting for me to notice it again. The floorboards creaked softly in the next room. Then again. Slow footsteps, measured, moving closer. I didn't move. Couldn't. The pale light from the window flickered. Not like sunlight, but like something passing in front of it. A faint shadow stretched across the wall, long and thin, shifting just enough to let me know it was real. The footsteps stopped. I could feel it now. The presence, right there, just beyond sight. It didn't want to hurt me. It just existed. As if the house had decided I shouldn't be alone anymore. The air pressed softly against my back, like a quiet acknowledgement, a greeting, or a reminder. Somewhere deep inside the walls, a faint rustle began, like pages turning, like whispers buried in wood. The doors down the hall creaked once more, one after another, opening and closing in slow rhythm. The sound spread through the rooms, gentle, familiar, until it felt like the whole house was breathing, alive, awake. I stood there, listening. The light grew warmer, though it never reached me. It stayed at a distance, painting the edges of the room in pale gold. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel afraid, just aware. Quietly aware that I was no longer alone. The house had remembered me. And now, it wouldn't forget.